All right, let's begin with part 2 of our Chapter 7 vocabulary terms. First one up is Jane Addams, number 18. She was a progressive, and she and other progressives started a series of settlement houses in slum neighborhoods throughout the country. The most famous of these, of course, is the Hull House, number 20, that was started by Addams, and Addams, and her volunteers actually lived there along with the people that they served. Now, the Hull House was located in Chicago. Now, what is a settlement house? Well, let's go back to number 19. A settlement house was an all-purpose community for poor people. Essentially what would be a halfway house today. Many of the people who visited and stayed in the settlement houses were women who had been left by their husband, battered women perhaps, new immigrants who had no other place to go. Some of the services provided by the settlement houses were child care, nursing services, and English lessons. In addition, they also provided some education.
The following teachers please report to the guidance office for a parent conference.
Sorry about that. Announcement came on. Anyways, I was saying, the settlement houses provided child care, nursing services, English lessons. They also provided some job training. They provided schools for children in many cases. So again, they played a very important role in some of these larger inner city neighborhoods, these ethnic ghettos, where the individuals there had no other place to turn. Now, number 21, lynching. Lynching is murder by hanging, and this was primarily aimed at, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, even up to this day, within the black community, okay? We normally associate lynching with the hanging of black men and women. Now, the term lynching goes all the way back to the American Revolution, but it became a term popular with the hanging of blacks after the Civil War and during the period of Reconstruction. Sorry about that. Reconstruction, and even to this day has a very negative racial connotation. Number 22, Ida Wells. Miss Wells helped organize a national anti-lynching campaign when 3 of her friends were lynched for crimes they did not commit. Now again, lynching is a term referring to hanging blacks, murdering blacks by hanging. More times than not, this is not deserved. This is not a crime which is a normal crime and an execution, as we normally have them in this country. The individuals who are being lynched are not tried. They are not accused and tried and found guilty of a crime and executed by the government. These are people who are dragged out of their homes and hanged, lynched, oftentimes in the middle of the night by groups like the Klan, the KKK, or other groups similar. And so Miss Wells took upon herself to bring this to national attention. By the way, bringing a great deal of anger and hatred upon her by some of those groups who were committing these lynchings. W.E. Du Bois, the first African American to earn a Ph.D. from Harvard, obviously a very bright man. He became a noted historian and was the editor of the journal known as The Crisis. He, along with Booker T. Washington, who will come up in a moment, were 2 of the leaders in the black community during this period of time. Now, number 25, Booker T. Washington. I mentioned him a moment ago along with Du Bois. Both were prominent African-American leaders. Washington argued very vociferously, very harshly, that African Americans should seek gradual equality. They should focus on job training and not be too demanding. This is the key part right here, not too demanding. Du Bois disagreed. Du Bois, much like the black activists in the 1960s, early 1970s, demanded action to be taken immediately. NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was started in the early 1900s, was an advocacy group for African Americans. Du Bois was one of the original founders. He, along with several other black leaders and white, again, this is important, oftentimes it is overlooked, that both black and white leaders, black and white progressives, got together to form the NAACP in order to provide an advocacy group for African Americans, a group that would advocate in Congress, through the courts, to bring about progressive change for blacks. Hold on just a moment. Okay, sorry about that. If there was a slight pause there, I just got kicked off the server, and I'm back. Anyway, let's continue. The Anti-Defamation League is another one of these progressive groups. It was a Jewish organization that was designed to end religious prejudice. Anti-Semitic language, anti-Semitic cartoons, anti-Semitic jokes are targeted by the Anti-Defamation League. Semitic, of course, refers to Jews, and so this group was created in order to provide an advocacy group for Jews. 27, pretty simple. Municipal is a town or a city. Now, 28 and 29, we start looking at some of the progressive governors of the period of time who brought about great change, helped bring about great change during the progressive era. The first one is Robert Lafayette. Let me start that over. Robert Lafayette, Battling Bob Lafayette, as he was often referred to, was the mayor of Wisconsin. The governor of Wisconsin, forgive me. The progressive governor of Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was responsible for a number of progressive reforms at the state level, which we're going to get to in the next page or two. Teddy Roosevelt, of course, we've already discussed, but he was the governor of New York at one time. He is also the police chief of New York. Also, in addition to that, he was the assistant secretary of the Navy, and of course, he was a war hero in the Spanish-American War before he becomes the vice president and then the president. And so these two men, along with others, played a very large role at the state level in bringing about progressive reforms. As we wait for the next slide to load up, there we go. We're going to take a look at some of those progressive political reforms right now. Number 30, progressive political reforms. We have 6 of them we're going to take a quick look at. Some of them we've already discussed, but I'm going to go over them again because it never hurts to go over this again and again and again. The first one, letter A, secret ballot. Talked about this the other day. Because voters were subjected to less pressure and intimidation when they could vote in secret, it became widespread. And as I mentioned to you previously, it became illegal to be followed into the voting area by someone who may attempt to intimidate you through physical threats, physical violence to force you to vote how they want you to vote. So the secret ballot made the vote more free, more open, and more people participated as a result of it. Initiative, which is letter B under number 30. Voters could directly introduce bills. The voters could directly introduce bills to the state legislature, and then the voters could vote on whether they wanted a bill passed. This gave you and I, the voter, more power. It gave us more control over laws that were being passed that we would have to live under. Another way in which this was done is letter C, referendum. We, the voters, could force the legislators to place a bill on the ballot, and we would vote in favor or against it, whichever you wanted, but we would have the final say as to whether or not a bill becomes a law through, hold on just a second. Sorry about that. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon when I'm doing this, and the announcements are coming on, so if I stop every so often, it's because of that. Anyway, let's continue. So referendum, hold on, be right back. I'm back. Anyway, so referendum gave you and I, the average voter, the power to force legislators to put a bill on the ballot that we would then vote for. Again, giving you and I, the average individual, more control of our own lives. Recall. Elected officials could be removed from office by voters in a special election. The most famous of these would, of course, be a few years ago when Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected the governor of the state of California. The current governor at that time, a man by the name of Gray Davis, was recalled. He was voted out of office, and Arnold was voted in as governor, where he served a couple of terms. Here in Texas, we don't really use that, or we've never really used it very much. Many states adopt these and use them far more than others. And again, in Texas, we are not one to have used recall or some of these others as much as many other states. California, for example, uses initiative referendum and recall quite a bit. Letter E, direct party primaries. Special elections are held to determine whom the party wants to represent them as candidates in the general election. Again, primarily, this is for the office of the president. We are, of course, in the middle of an election cycle. We have the Republicans and Democrats going through a series of debates, and we will start the primary season at the turn of the new year. So starting in January, early February, we will start the primaries. State of Texas and all the other states have one. At the end of the process, each party, both Republicans and Democrats, will choose who is going to represent them in the general election in November of 16. Now, before the direct primary, we would have our presidential candidates chosen in the back rooms, often by big money donors, big party members or important members of the party, and they would look around and say, okay, who's going to be the best guy for us? Who's going to do what we want done? For example, Roosevelt, Vanderbilt may have a say in some of this. Okay, who is going to work with us the best? Who's going to help us more? Not who's best for the country, but who is going to help me in my individual area. I mean, again, Carnegie and Steel, Rockefeller and Oil, who's going to help me the most? That was done away with, letter E. And finally here, under number 30, letter F, direct election of senators. Now, this was mentioned the other day. The 17th Amendment was passed in 1916, and it took away the appointing of senators by the states and gave it to you and I, the voter. Now, thanks to the 17th Amendment, you and I determine who's going to represent us in the Senate, which again gives us more direct control over Congress, which then gives us more, hold on, I'll be right back.
That's 118.
That was an exciting one. I just love these announcements. That was a bus double up, by the way. Can't live without them. Anyways, I was saying, so the 17th Amendment gives you and I, the average voter, more control over the Congress, which again gives us more control over the direction our nation takes. All right, let's go to the next slide. The spoils system. Now, the spoils system is an old concept that had been around for a number of years. Government jobs, there we go. Government jobs were used to reward people who made contributions to politicians and helped those politicians in their campaigns, helped them win their campaigns. And so I, as a, let's say, mayor candidate, win, and then those of you who donated money or helped me get elected would be given city jobs as a reward for helping me in my campaign. This, of course, led to very great corruption at the local, state, and at the national level. The executive branch, which the president controls, today has millions of individuals who work for him. Eventually one day her, but for right now, him. Back in 1896, 1900, 1904, 1908, there were fewer people who worked for the federal government, but still quite a lot. So I, as president, got to choose, let's say again, I win the presidency, I get to choose who I reward for helping me become president. And this could lead to all kinds of problems, again, all kinds of corruption as a result of this. Now, the spoils system was done away with when the Pendleton Act was when passed in 1883. This is a law passed by Congress, okay, to combat corruption that is a direct result of the spoils system. Now, what did the Pendleton Act do? It created the Civil Service Commission. You are now required to take a test in order to seek employment in the federal government. Now, there are still some positions that are appointed by the government, federal courts, for example, Supreme Court, cabinet positions, and there are literally hundreds of those positions that the president still appoints. But the average worker who works for the federal government and the executive branch now must take a test because of the Civil Service Commission created by the Pendleton Act. This helped end, though not completely ruled out, but helped end a great deal of corruption that we found throughout our government at the federal, state, and local level. Teddy Roosevelt, again, mentioned several times. He was McKinley's VP in 1900, becomes president after McKinley is assassinated. Why? Because McKinley is assassinated because some little puppy didn't get a job. Make that a little bit bigger. There we go. McKinley was assassinated because some little puppy didn't get a job thanks to the spoil system, and so he took his anger out on McKinley. Coal miners' strike in 1902, one of the big first tests for Teddy. Again, McKinley's assassinated shortly after he's inaugurated. Teddy becomes president. One of the first thing that pops up, really big thing that pops up within a year and a half or so of Teddy becoming president, is this coal miner strike. Now, of course, coal miners dig out of the ground coal. In this period of time, we're looking at coal was the main source of providing heat, and a winter without coal was going to be a really cold winter. So Teddy Roosevelt, he's often referred to, or just plain Teddy, saw this as a national crisis, so he brought both sides to the White House. And when the mine owners refused to negotiate, keep in mind, this is the mine owners. They felt that they had all the cards stacked in their favor. Teddy was a Republican. Republicans were, by and large, very favorable to big business. Mine owners were big business, so they felt that Teddy would side with them. He threatened to use federal troops to run the mines if the mine owners didn't compromise, okay? Eventually, there was a compromise, and things did work out. But again, this showed a progressive streak that Teddy had. This showed that change was on the menu. All right, let's go to our next and last slide for this video. Trusts, monopoly. Fairly similar. A trust is a form of business consolidation. What that basically means is monopolies would then, through secretive and unfair means, buy stock in other companies and then control those companies that had a direct impact upon the monopoly. It's kind of complicated, but a monopoly, let's go into that a little more first, is a company controlling a particular industry. Standard Oil was a monopoly. J.D. Rockefeller, the richest man in the world at the time of his death, controlled a monopoly. He and his company controlled 80 to 90% of all oil production, oil refining, and oil and its byproducts sales in this country. That is a monopoly. A trust is a consolidation of that monopoly with other businesses, for example, railroads. So J.D. would buy stock in railroad companies and sort of secretly control them, and through that control give his monopoly more power. Eventually, through the efforts of our three progressive presidents, Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson, and we'll get to those two in the next video, they're able to break up some of these trusts and bring about more fair competition. And of course, competition is extremely important to capitalism. Square deal. This is a nickname given to Teddy's domestic policies. It comes from a speech he gave in which he basically said that everyone deserves a square deal. Everyone deserves a fair hand dealt to them. And Teddy believed, as Republicans did at the time, that if everyone has a fair chance, if everyone's given a fair opportunity, everybody will be, or rephrase that, not everybody, but more people will be successful. It is when the deck of cards is stacked against them that people are less successful. So a square deal gives everyone that opportunity to be successful. Now, laissez-faire is something we discussed a couple of chapters ago, a form of capitalism which the government takes a hands-off approach to business. Again, I've given you the analogy several times of the boxing match. The boxers are the consumers and producers. The referee is the government. And so it's the government's job, the referee's job, to ensure that both sides follow the rules, follow the laws. Laissez-faire, in this case, the referee, is not even in the ring. He's allowing the two, consumers and producers, or if you wish, the employees and employers, to go at it. Whoever's strongest wins. So laissez-faire was our economic policy for many decades, which led to some of the problems that we faced, which of course then led to the creations of monopolies and trust, which then, of course, as we discussed earlier, cut into competition, which hurts you and I as consumers. So laissez-faire is bad. We do need a certain amount of government control. The question is today, how much? In today's Democratic and Republican parties argue how much control. Okay, let's move on. We got two more and we'll finish up this video. The Meat Inspection Act is a direct result of The Jungle, Upton Sinclair's book, which chronicled the horrible conditions in the meatpacking plants in the city of Chicago, and they're found everywhere. The unsanitary conditions, the brutality shown toward not only the workers but the animals, it was horrible. And so as a result of the book, The Jungle, written by Upton Sinclair, the government provided a law to inspect the meat before it would be packaged and then sold to the American public. The Pure Food and Drug Act, again, the same year, 1906, as the Meat Inspection Act, regulated the preparation of foods and the sale of medicines. Again, through this concept of progressivism, fixing some of the things that had been broken during the Gilded Age, fixing some of the corruption that had taken place during the Gilded Age. For example, within the meatpacking industry, the Meat Inspection Act, Pure Food and Drug Act was a way to fix those things that had been broken during the period of corruption during the Gilded Age. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop this. Number one, I'm sorry for some of the misspoken words during this video. I have been trying to get this done as quickly as possible. It's still over 20 minutes. Anyway, we'll continue and hopefully finish up the rest of the terms of Chapter 7 on Wednesday. Bye.